Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Friday Ramblings. We're gonna be a little bit different here, like a recent video on comic book creator George Perez. We are here to mark the passing of a man who worked in the field of comics and was very iconic for doing so, as well as providing me personally with a lot of entertainment. And that is the recently departed Kazuki Takahashi. Again, this is one of those where, I certainly had the option of doing a immediate recording and thought of doing it because I knew that I had been wanting to talk about his seminal work, Yu-Gi-Oh, for a while. It was something that was on my to-do list. And certainly in the future we may do a more in-depth dive into the Yu-Gi-Oh series, because this video is going to be more about just, what he meant to me as a creator. So, as I was saying, I could have recorded it the day I heard of his passing and made it that episode of the Ramblings for that Friday, just a day or two later. But I knew it would be one of those things where people were, similar to Mr. Perez, going to be scrambling all over each other to, get their feelings out. And I have nothing against that. But, I wanted to give it time to breathe, as well as, let that first wave of discussions kind of get out of the way. Not because, I'm trying to be competitive and be like, oh, I'm going to do the better one because I'm going to make more time. No, I didn't. I don't. I'm not that guy. Whether it was with any of these videos I've done in the past, or will probably no doubt do in the future, it's about what is good for me and what is good for the channel, which is not being in the middle of an ocean of similar videos all going live at the same time. Because I know I don't have the largest audience. I'm not even in the top 100 channels. And, it's just kind of a thing. Is I know it's easy for even my subscribers and stuff to not be able to, the same day my videos go up, watch them. Some of my favorite channels have got that issue, but I don't know, we're getting off topic. But it's just when you start thinking about creators and what they mean to you, and you yourself do try to be creative and create things. It's things like that just get in your mind. Like, man, I hope people are, give themselves time to process and really understand the person. So this is, as I said, this is going to be more about Takahashi than the work itself. We're going to, touch on it briefly, but we'll all no doubt do a much more focused deep dive on the manga, especially in the future at some point. Probably not in the next month or two, just because, again, I want this video to kind of stand on its own, which I think is important when you do videos of these sorts. So let's get to it. We're gonna knock out the basic facts first of the man's life, and then we'll get into just my personal feelings on some of the stuff he did. So he was born Kazuyo Takahashi. Kazuki was his professional working name. is his pen name, as we would probably say in America. And he was a manga artist and game creator, as he worked regularly with the card creation companies on the Yu-Gi-Oh games, supervising the rules and the art for the cards, including contributing many card creation ideas himself, which, again, since the manga spun off the card game, that you would think that would be obvious, but there was, for people not familiar with the card game, for every card you saw in the manga, there was probably like 3 created for the card game that just didn't make it into the manga due to space and time. So yeah, I mean, even those cards he had some supervisory involvement with, if not directly creating. But he had started as a manga artist in the 80s, did various short works, one-shots, short-run series that, you know, did good, but were not landmark until Yu-Gi-Oh! Started in 1996. And it ran until 2004. So he had an 8-year run on the manga. Now, for those of you who are major Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans or have a passing knowledge of the greater meta franchise, again, when we refer to this, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga, we are referring to the original series, which, again, I'm going to give you just a real quick touch on via my own copies of the manga volumes. Not all of them, but just, as I said, this is going to be a quick passing. But it is not that 8 years does not include the various spin-off mangas, most of which he served as editor and script supervisor of, but they would be done by other people, usually people that he had worked with on the original manga, or were just working peers of his, and so they were, you know, given full permission to help broaden out the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is a good thing, which is, you know, it's positive. I'm not really big on a lot of the spin-offs, and I'll talk more about that, as I said, in the regular manga video. But, you know, the fact that Takahashi, you know, understood that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Concept could be envisioned in different ways and spun off into different stories, even though he brought his core cast to a conclusion, which is good. But still, besides Yu-Gi-Oh! Or post Yu-Gi-Oh! I should say, in 2013 he released a one-shot manga named Drump, which was another gaming-related one. In 2015, Takahashi received the Inkpot Award from Comic-Con International for his outstanding contribution to comics. He also wrote a 2-part manga titled Secret Reverse for the Marvel Cross Shonen Jump Plus Super Collaboration, which was released in fall of 2019, so just a few years ago. As far as manga that Takahashi liked, some of his favorites were Akira, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and Dragon Ball. Because, you know, everybody loves Dragon Ball. It's Dragon Ball. Don't want to veer too far into my fandom on that territory, but he also enjoyed reading American comics, with Hellboy being his favorite American comic book character. Besides card games and tabletop role-playing games, which was highlighted in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. He also played shogi and mahjong. And his pet dog, a Shiba Inu named Taro, was the basis for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game monster card Shiba Warrior Taro. The card's artwork was personally drawn by Takahashi. As far as his passing, which as I said has been very recent, we're just going to get through this real quick because I really don't want to focus too much on this, but just to tie up this quick summary of him. On July 6th at 10:30 a.m. Japanese Standard Time, Takahashi was found dead 300 meters, or 980 feet, for those of us who use the English instead of the metric system, off the shore of Naga, Okinawa, by Japanese Coast Guard officers, following a civilian report from a passing boat. He had apparently died a few days prior, and after an investigation was launched, his cause of death is considered a result of drowning, and his estimated time of death was on the afternoon of July 4th. Which means, again, yes, he would have been in the water about 2 days before he was found. So let's get on to stuff a little more positive and a little more about the celebration of the man's life. Now, this is where it all started. This is Volume 1 of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, or at least the American release of it. Look at that. Yugimoto. The little boy who had become the king of games. It's the back cover where you can see him being silly with his friends. So, one of the things about the early volumes of the manga, again, we're not going to go super into this later, but for reference, in the early manga, he would do a variety of games. Like, see, here's one using some sound-sensitive clowns in a contest of basically who can stay quiet the longest with a local bully. That was the original manga idea, was that using a different game custom tailored to the antagonist each time, the Yugi would, due to help from what was originally considered some sort of possessing spirit that was kind of vindictive, what we would later come to be known as the Pharaoh, Yugi would punish people who wronged him or his friends. This gave the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga kind of a horror twist to it, in that you were dealing with a character who would black out and have another intelligence guiding his body, punishing people in, classic Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt-esque, ironic twists of fate, with some rendered insane, others flat out dying. Throughout the run, only 2 characters managed to show up for rematches. This would be a bully who was originally a friend of Yugi's eventual best friend, Jonoichi, known as Joey Wheeler in the American translations. Before he became friends with Yugi, he ran with a bunch of degenerates and delinquents. Some of them tried to lure him back, eventually using blackmail and coercion. Yugi punished them. In a non-fatal way, they would make a second attempt to lure Jonoichi back to them and gain revenge on Yugi for embarrassing them. The second time they would fail, and that would be the end of them. The other is Seto Kaiba, Yugi's greatest rival. Their rivalry being the backbone of the majority of the entire original series run. Seto Kaiba, as I said, being the top rival, would be the most recurring character to challenge Yugi, even when the focus shifted to the card game, which was actually introduced in the duel introducing Seto Kaiba. It was originally intended to be a one-off, but when the character of Kaiba in the card game was received very positively, he wrote other stories with Kaiba and the card game, which within the universe is called Duel Monsters, and is heavily influenced by the real-world card game Magic the Gathering. But eventually, he would just focus things completely on the card game and the mysteries of the second personality inside Yugi that was connected to the Millennium Puzzle, an ancient Egyptian artifact that Yugi possessed. He was the first person to put the Millennium Puzzle together since the time of ancient Egypt. So, that's a thing. As I said, eventually, a series would become completely about the card game. This is when the rules started really being thought out and made to where the game could be adapted into the real world and played coherently. That first one or two duels, there was a lot of looseness in what he was doing because he didn't really think it would be a big thing. So in America, that era, we call it Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist. Again, this is the first volume of that era of the book. This is the longest run. This is what most people think of the manga. Duelist era is where the anime started. So then, the third and final era of the manga is Millennium World. This is a short arc. It's 5 volumes and is focused 100% on the laying out the final details of the Pharaoh's origins. Pharaoh, of course, being the second personality inside Yugi, originally called Yami Yugi, which is loosely translated as Dark Yugi, because, as I said, originally he was very mean-spirited and very wicked. Though, I mean, again, can't blame him. He's woken up out of his little spiritual stasis after thousands of years and finds himself possessing a teenage boy surrounded by, assholes. Everybody's bound to be a little grumpy in that circumstance, especially when you're also amnesiac on top of it. But Millennium World, as I said, brings closure to the Pharaoh's journey to discover who he is, who he was, why he was sealed inside the Millennium Puzzle, as well as bringing the original cast to a point in time where they had grown up over their adventures, Yugi himself gaining the confidence he needed to be the king of games and the recognized international champion of duel monsters without needing Yami Yugi's help to win those duels. So it was a good time. Of course, there are many other characters involved in the series, but we'll cover those in later videos. I'm going to throw this one out real quick because, as I said, I'm about to start spurging about my personal feelings. This was technically a spin-off, but you can see here it was, some text a little small, but the base concept being attributed to Kazuki Takahashi because it's the characters he introduced in the original. And the story and art is by Akira Ito. And Yu-Gi-Oh! R was written after Millennium World ended, but was designed to take place between the end of Duelist and the start of Millennium World. Because it is said that there was a bit of passage of time between the two events, and it basically just featured a short adventure following up some dangling plot threads from the first of the two major arcs that make up Duelist, this being Duelist Kingdom, and what happened with antagonist Pegasus and his company after the conclusion of that tournament. It's the only spin-off that does directly involve the original cast as far as the mangas go. There's, been like reunion movies and crossover movies, and we'll discuss all that later. Otherwise, as I said, I'm a fan of the manga. The anime's pretty good. Some of the filler arcs get kind of weird. There's like 2 different ones involving virtual reality. The first one's not too bad because it's really short. It's like literally 1 story arc. The other one is like a full season, and it's right in the middle of events from the second major arc of Duelist, so it's awkwardly placed. Again, we'll spur more on that another time, but I did for a while collect the cards. There's a notebook that has some of my more valuable cards, ones that were not common graded, where you can see a lot of the artwork that Takahashi supervised and approved if he did not draw himself. See some of my favorites here. Let's see, I like, where is it actually? Let's see, there's Dark Necrofear. That's one that was, oh, let me get the camera. Right here. Dark Necrofear. That's one that was important in the manga for a few duels. Used by one of the secondary antagonists. Oh, that's a good one. Butterfly Dagger Elma. It's got some good boosting effects to it, and I like the art there with the dagger just hovering over the statue. It's very nice. Some good ones. Oh yeah. Gravekeeper's Watcher. There's like a series of Gravekeeper's cards, and Necro Valley's a good card that helps boost those as well. I don't have right now my actual playing deck I used. As I said, this is just kind of me keep it. Oh, Total Defense Show. Oh, there's another Butterfly Dagger Elma. I don't know why I don't have those together. Total Defense Shogun, that's a good one. That's a good one to frustrate players with. But, yeah, these are all the old games. Yeah, because I don't know, I'm going to have to read. Oh, yeah, the 3 Sphinx cards. Those are good. I don't know, problem with the auto zoom on the camera here, but, well, as I said, we'll do later video focusing on the cards. I've got a ton more cards. A whole bunch of commons, as everybody does. And then my playing deck, which is in another storage area. But as far as the manga goes, I always prefer the manga to the anime, as I said, because some of the filler arcs kind of broke up a lot of the pacing. They were good ideas, just they were kind of oddly inserted in a few places. And the fact that they... Like, one of the big things with the pacing I didn't like is it really pushed before it... pushed the idea of Seto Kaiba being a kind of anti-hero character, because most of the filler arcs involved him and Yugi teaming up. At least the first few. And Again, it weirdly paces his character growth. In the manga, it's like much more of a straight path. Whereas in the anime, like, they kept teasing it, and it was like, oh, well, yeah, they're kind of getting along, and oh, but at the end of the arc, Kaiba has to tell Yugi piss off, because it's not at the point in the manga where they're really tolerating each other. So it's really, like, their back and forth pseudo-friendship just was really weirdly done. And again, I blame that more on the anime, but that was one of the highlights of the manga, was seeing, as I said, Kaiba's the main rival. His character growth from being just this cold-hearted, rich brat into somebody that Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, really grew to trust and respect, and who, never really embraced a lot of people as friends, but was able to open his heart more to people and, admit that he didn't have to be the world's recognized 100%, no dispute about it, best gamer to like himself and to be able to accomplish his real goals, which, spoilers, was, as somebody who grew up, who, at one point spent years of his life as an orphan before getting adopted into his money, said of wanting to build a series of theme parks around the world that would help fund orphanages, so that as many orphans around the world as he could afford to help would have awesome places to live and to grow and prosper in until they could find families. And it's like, that was a great goal. And I love that Kazuki Takahashi wrote that in. Like, he could have touched on his past as an orphan, but have him just be so, hey, I'm not part of that anymore, screw them, they can get themselves out like I did. Like, he could have kept that rough edge to Kaiba, but, that was just such a wonderful thing to see. Somebody who, even if he buried it for years because he was dealing with his own anger management issues and resentments towards different people in his life, a guy who deep down in his heart never forgot how horrible it can be to be an orphan, and that he didn't really want, he wanted that to be as unhorrible as possible for the other orphans out there. It was something really noble, and just the fact Takahashi would think of that and to write that is really cool. Like, it really shows somebody that understood, some of the effects that, were being old enough when they're adopted to have, remembered being in foster care and, see all these other kids chosen and, not you. But, that was one of those things that really made Kaiba feel like a really three-dimensional character. But yeah, the first era, the duelist stuff is great. It makes for great reading as a huge arc. But I love these first volumes. Like, I've been known sometimes just to reread the pre-duelist era. As I said, we had the Sound Clowns. We had, hold on, let me get to the good part of this one. This was great. They played air hockey on a giant cooking griddle, with the idea being that in the center of the puck, which you can see here, there was a beaker of explosive chemical. So the idea was that you wanted to knock it back to your opponent and keep it on their half of the field, so when the hot griddle melted the ice that the puck was made out of all the way, the chemical would hit and the heat would react it and it would blow your opponent away. as I said, I mean, just like creepy stuff like that. It's like, dude, let's play air hockey with explosives. There was this thing with this con artist guy that ran his own store where he would sell people really valuable stuff for a good deal, and then have this gang he was in cahoots with steal stuff back from the people so he could just keep reselling the same handful of inventory over and over again to people, which is just, you know, really crooked business. And Yami Yugi finds him, and they do this whole duel with a scorpion inside a sneaker, and there was all these coins thrown into the sneaker, and whoever pulled the most coins out without getting stung by the scorpion, you know, over a series of rounds, you know, game's over when all the coins are picked up, would get all the coins as their prize. But it's like, dude, you got a sneaker. It's like, it's only so big. You're sticking your hand in, and you know there's a scorpion in there. Like, what the hell, man? Like that, you know, as much as I love the Duelist era, those duels, those early duels, it is my favorite stuff. And I mean, the big finale, I mean, not finale, I think there was like a couple more short duels after it, but the big rematch with Kaiba, which is like the longest arc in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel, the pre-duelist era, with he built a whole theme park with multiple challenges for Yugi against different people he hired to be warm-up duelists. You know, and it's a great story arc. I don't want to spoil too much for you, and again, I'll talk about it in the future, but like stuff like that was just so creative and so inspiring, and just it, you know, reading stuff like that and how he balanced the creepiness of these duels with, you know, the high school sitcom humor that you would get around the duels. And I mean, just the great character art. Find some good art. Yeah, like, see, there's from the first arc, you got you know, will they, won't they, possible love interest, probably not, good buddy Anzu, aka Taya Gardner, again in English dub. There's Jinochi and his buddy Honda. It's the core four there. But yeah, and then, oh yeah, I love this one with Anzu had the job at the Burger Shack and had the little fast food uniform. It's the two sides of, there we go, that finger. It's the two sides of Yugi there. It's like regular Yugi, Yami Yugi. But it was just like, he did such a good job of, even though it's physically the same body and nothing transforms or anything when Yami takes over, just his use of expressions and body language to denote which one of them was in control it was so many subtle detail brilliances, and it's just, I love it so much. Like, it's such great example of the art, you know, benefiting the story. Like, you can't really tell a Jekyll and Hyde story like that without really strong art. You know, where there is no physical transformation, unlike the classic Jekyll and Hyde story, where it's just a personality switch. you need that strong art and that ability to show subtle differences in attitude and body language to tell a story, and he did it very well. And there's a lot of character beats that have influenced some of my own writing, and ideas I've got for future writing. So there's just so much. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just such a strong franchise. Even if you don't count the spinoffs, even if you just look at the original manga series, the cards relating to that era, obviously the different spinoffs had their own card sets, and too. As I said, even the anime, especially if you just kind of watch the streamline anime where it's and skip over the filler arcs, which, as I said, a couple of them are good. Sometimes they're just, it's 2-3 episodes, so it's not, you can go ahead and burn through those. But like that second VR thing that took an entire season, you can skip that. It's or some of the later stuff with the whole the dragons and Atlantis, and it got a little weird when they were stretching the anime out. I think because the manga hadn't finished yet, so they didn't have the Millennium World era yet ready to be adapted. So they had to produce some stuff in between, which is fine, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm gonna save that for another discussion. But just Takahashi created a series that inspired and entertained millions around the world. He created a card game that even more people played and loved. It's a great card game that, for a lot of kids, got them into playing collectible card games. So as they got older, they would be able to get into more strategic, challenging stuff like Magic the Gathering. And I mean, that's the thing is, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to last. I mean, without him being around, I don't know how that will impact any future spin-off projects. Obviously, this video being recorded about a week or so after his body was found. Only a couple days after the investigation was declared done and his cause of death officially stated. Obviously nobody's made announcements on the future of the Meta franchise, but just that original stuff that he personally wrote it's going to outlast him by so many years. I guarantee you. Even if it doesn't stay in active print, just the legacy of Yu-Gi-Oh! The fan art online. People showing off their card decks. Some of the eBay bids for the rarest of the rare cards. As I said, what I showed you earlier were they were above the lowest grade of rarity, but they weren't anywhere close to the high grade super rarities, the super ultra duper, only a handful made rares, obviously, because I'm not some super rich guy that could afford to buy those. But that's the point. Like, there's so many little pieces, and got the memes, the internet memes. It's time to duel. Like, his legacy is going to be around so much longer than his death will, it won't put a stop to it, is what I'm trying to say. People will be going back and watching that anime for many years. People will come across the card game in one form or another for many years. I'm hoping the manga, in one format or another, stays in print, or is made available as digital ebooks for many years, because it was a brilliant manga. And just thank you, Takahashi-san. Thank you for the fact that you spent years and years plugging away, trying different ideas until something clicked, and then just developing it and growing it over 8 years, and switching gears when your audience said, hey, this is really good, this is stuff we want to see more of specifically. And because that's and just being a great creator, letting other people play in your sandbox, being somebody that didn't just let them, encourage people to do it. Which it sounds weird, but I'm going to tell you, as somebody who writes, as somebody who creates stuff, one of the hardest things to do can be putting your work, your creation, a piece of your heart and soul into the hands of other creators. So if nothing else, he gets respect from me for that. He didn't have to. He could have let the original manga in there. Or he could have just said, no, I'll just write more spin-offs myself. But no, he had the humility to be like, no, other people can write brilliant Yu-Gi stuff besides me. They can introduce new heroes with their own struggles, new cards, all that. So, thank you. No matter what your favorite Yu-Gi variant is. If you like the new stuff, if you like the old stuff, if you like the anime but don't care about the real world card game, if you like the video games, we didn't even really touch on the video games. That probably a whole video by itself, but thank you. Thank you, Kazuki Takahashi, for being a wonderful creator, for doing so many things as a professional correctly. And I'll miss you. I will miss you. I will miss just the idea that there might be another anniversary story, a special one-off manga or something with adult Yu-Gi. I don't know. We don't know what could have been, but the content you gave us was great. And I've gone a little long on this one, but you know what? That's what I'm saying. These ramblings are a little different, and I appreciate everybody that's listened with me this long. And you know what? Peace, and tell the people you love that you love them. Be with your family, because you never know if you're going to be here tomorrow. And that's the thing we all have to remember every time something like this happens. You never know what may or may not be there tomorrow. So value and appreciate everybody around you. Next week we'll do something a little more fun. But, you know, as I said, like the last one with Mr. Perez, this one snuck up on us. We'll get back to regular scheduled programming next week, and hopefully we won't have to do one of these videos again for a good long time. See you in 7.